Welcome to the ClearSlide and Aragon Research webinar, A Wake-Up Call for Sales and Marketing, Invest in a Sales Engagement Platform. We'll get started in a couple minutes, and to start, we'll just conduct a quick sound check. So if you can hear me, please click Ask a Question and type yes. We'll take 10 seconds to collect your responses. Presenting today, we have Jim Lundy, CEO and lead analyst of Aragon Research, and Michael Schultz, VP of Marketing and Business Development at ClearSlide. Aragon Research is an industry analyst firm that focuses on technology research and business advisory services. Prior to Aragon Research, Jim was the VP and General Manager of the Collaboration Business Unit at Cyber Software. He also spent 12 years at Gartner as a Managing VP and Distinguished Analyst. I'll let you take it from here, Jim.
Thank you, Kathy, and great to be here today with you all, wherever you are in the world. We're broadcasting live here from California. Michael Schultz is also with me, and we're looking forward to talking to you today about why this topic of sales engagement platforms is such a wake-up call. And one of the reasons for that is what we call the race to digitize sales. And what do we mean by that? We think that there's a fundamental shift in the way that people are selling. It's not the way that I used to sell. I used to be a sales leader. And it's not the way a lot of people are selling today because buyers are just so much more sophisticated. And salespeople and sales managers need better answers. They need it faster. And to do that, they need to sell digitally. And the purpose of this webinar today is to introduce you to the topic of sales engagement platforms, which will enable digital selling. And again, when we talk about the whole world of business, the biggest trend today is digital business and digital work. And we think this idea of sales engagement is going to be the thing that will really accelerate time to revenue for companies. So a couple of things we're going to try to accomplish today as far as our agenda. Talk about some of the key trends in sales engagement. Talk about the market, because we have identified a market size. We're going to talk about how the market's going to evolve. We'll talk a little bit about the vendors and how they're going to be evaluated. And then really kind of leave you with, if you're a sales leader, sales operations, or marketing, how can you put sales engagement to work and really make the shift to digital selling? So with that, we're going to dive in. First, what is sales engagement? So this whole idea of sales enablement has been a term that's been around for a long time, and we really looked at the idea of how do salespeople touch customers. And so we'll be talking today about this and defining what a sales engagement platform is. But essentially, it's really trying to put forth really a platform that really does bring a lot of the elements together as far as a technology stack, kind of similar to the way other office suites are being sold to knowledge workers, but allows a rep to sell digitally. So, the market that we've defined is SCP today around 700 million, growing to about 5 billion by 2021. Now, to put that in perspective, cloud office suites, which again is the horizontal angle, Google or Microsoft, 14 billion growing to about 19 billion, not as fast of a growth rate. The reason for that today is a lot of people today, when you talk about how they sell, they're using email, they're using PowerPoint, they're using WebEx, they're using a zillion different products, and they're not really getting the job done. So we really look at this and look at the market as being a platform for selling, the idea of omni-channel engagement, and really the bottom line is faster outcomes due to really intensive real-time analytics. Obviously, ClearSlide is one of the players, and Mike's going to be adding some color commentary here as we talk about this. In fact, I'll just throw something out, Michael. What's your take on this whole idea of office suites versus SCP?
Yeah. Hey, well, thanks, Jim. Well, I think and I think you're going to talk a little bit more about this today, but I think the notion of being able to pull everything together into kind of a set of tools that you can use that give you not just the level of activity that's going on, but true engagement is really transforming the business of selling. And I think we see that trend with a lot of the customers that we talk to, and I think that some of the research that you're doing in this area really is helping define kind of the direction that people are heading.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And again, we're going to really dive into this in a big way. But the idea of really when a category is a real market, it's basically there's a set of both buyers and a set of sellers. And we've studied this market for over 2 years. And the reason that we're really have spent time on this is because a lot of our clients ask us to, because there's so much confusion in sales, quote, sales enablement at the technology level, and we're really, we think we've kind of really come up with the answer. What about market disruption in digital era? So, we really look at the app economy and digital applications such as, for example, ordering a taxi via a mobile app like Uber. That has totally disrupted the transportation industry. Yellow Cab in San Francisco declared bankruptcy, and that's created a whole other set of issues and opportunities. But when you look at selling has been around since before the 1600s, but 1600s was really when it came really online with door-to-door and something that they call in Europe peddlers. And now what we're really looking at, starting around 2010 and forward, with the emergence of providers like ClearSlide and others, is the idea of digital selling. And what's going to enable that is what we're calling these sales engagement platforms. But essentially, a lot of the craft of selling has not changed over the years. The methodologies, whether it's inside, outside, direct, indirect, those have been rather consistent too. But really, the idea of a new toolkit, not just a briefcase, not just collaterals, not just a phone, not just email, but a whole new set of things that allow you to really do everything all at once is really kind of what we're talking about. And so when you talk about digital business, one of the things we're talking about is, are you selling in an analog way or are you selling in a digital way? And by the way, here at Aragon, we have salespeople, we have millennials, and millennials oftentimes are one of the first way, they're very smart technology. They even recognize that here, like, hey, the way we're doing it is not working. We need a better way.
Yeah. Hey, Jim. You and I have talked about this, for a while. But there's a lot of talk about the death of a salesman, about the profession kind of going away as we go more digital. And I think what's fascinating, even in the example you just brought up, is how it's really the nature of selling has changed and evolved, and it's the adaptation to new technologies that actually helping just kind of reimagine the profession. And so I just, again, it's a fascinating topic, and I know that we're going to cover some of that during the rest of the session.
Well, yeah, it's funny, because having dealt myself, both at the product level and in sales and marketing roles, and also as an analyst, I hear a lot of comments like, "Oh, we don't need salespeople." But yeah, when you look at most issues with most companies, when they're not performing, it usually has to do with we didn't invest in sales. So, it's, I've certainly met a lot of chief engineers over the years and there's still companies say, like, "Oh, we don't need sales. We can do it all online." And there's some truth to, immediate consumption. But usually if there's a value to a solution over a certain dollar value, most companies are going to say, "I'm not going to really buy it until I can talk to somebody that can help me." And again, salespeople are really, at the end of the day, they're advocates, and they're really about helping connect and build relationships, and to provide the right level of service. Okay, so one of the other things we want to introduce as a trend is we're talking about the shift to predictive, and we've talked about here at Aragon predictive business applications for almost 3 years, and the area that is growing the fastest, where we've seen something called machine learning help sales organizations grow faster, is really in sales. So whether it's leads and forecasting, or in the case of SCP, the rise of predictive content, where the system can tell you the content that's working. That's really one of the key things that SCP platforms will do. And we're going to introduce this concept of that's not new about guided selling, but the idea of the machines helping to recognize what's happening in real time and then provide that feedback to the person, like the salesperson or the manager, can really help you, not only learn on the fly but adjust. And so when you actually look at the science of how great people sell, great salespeople are really networkers, right? They're constantly watching what's going on. They're constantly monitoring their prospect base, but they're also looking around and saying, who is doing what? So they're really looking for instantaneous feedback. And when you look at the rise of some of the machine learning, is the software is doing that now, and it's going to help some of those people that maybe don't know how to do it as well as the top performers to do it better. But when you look at every other area of enterprise software, again, predictive applications have had a bigger impact in sales. And it's still very early days. A lot of people today still don't know what predictive lead scoring is. As a result of this webinar today, a lot of them are going to know more about what sales engagement platforms are. All right, so again, part of the problem is, and it's a trend, is the sales enablement app explosion. So there's so many different apps that are out there. Literally, we have calls every single day from providers that are briefing us saying, oh, we've got this new application, and it's going to solve this particular problem. And so one of the things that happens is, the idea of being overwhelmed with tools. Which tools should I use? And really, not just it's the tool problem, not just the confusion problem, but the productivity problem, which is I have to leave this application and go do something else. My manager also requires me to update Salesforce. I got to take time to do that. So you really have the perfect storm for a better way to do things. And Michael, I know you've seen this in your career. You were at Microsoft for a long time. You've seen this kind of story play out many times, right?
Absolutely. I think that's one of the areas that I think Jim, you've done research in has really been around. I think it's the average rep uses between 5 and 8 different apps on top of CRM just in their daily activities, and I think that kind of speaks to the confusion. And we've done some research on our side that talks about how, despite all the investment in these tools and technologies, 60% of sales leaders say that they're not getting value out of the tools that they've invested in. And I think the ability to kind of bring it all together in one place, I think kind of is your allusion to kind of some of the work that Microsoft has been doing for a while. But really being able to pull it together so you really have the consistency and all the analytics across all is really what can really establish and drive value.
Yeah, I think the other thing that really is also tied to this is what we're seeing again is the idea of using technology as a weapon, and again making it very specific to a use case. And in this case, it's about sales. But literally we hear about this an awful lot, and it's not just a rep problem; it's also a manager problem because sometimes the managers are uncomfortable with some of the new technologies, so they won't use it. And then you've got rogue teams going out, we just signed up for this service and that service. And so just like in content management where you've had proliferation, you're seeing that in spades. First of all, because sales organizations have money, startups realize that, and so they're basically targeting them and having actually quite a good degree of success. But now there's a revolt going on because it's taking too much time to use all those tools. So kind of a perfect storm. And then another trend that is really fundamental to one of the things we're going to talk about is the idea of shifting from suites to platforms. So the suite model, and again, we are picking on Microsoft here, is I have a better suite. It's got everything you need. You don't need to go buy anything else. If we actually look at the opposite of that, where you look at a platform, and for example, CRM, Salesforce, and other CRM tools are becoming platforms where other things can integrate with them. And so instead of saying, hey, they've got everything I need, I don't need to buy anything else. In software today, it's really more about connecting things together that are harmonious, that also work together, so you don't necessarily have to, if for example, leave an application to do certain things, it'll actually talk to the other application automatically. And so really what that allows for is, one organization may have a couple of apps that are plugged in, for example, to their sales engagement platform or to CRM, and others may have different ones. So it allows for innovation and customization, but it's really going away from the idea of, only buy this particular thing. And so when you look at, for example, office suites, just to talk about that for a second, is, a lot of the providers in office suite market say everybody needs to have this. And, the thing I'm going to be talking to you about is really, we think sales engagement platforms are really the new office for digital sales teams. And again, we're going to introduce that. But this is a fundamental thing that a lot of people in the market don't necessarily realize yet, but it does really start to get at this idea of more providers today are partnering. And I know Clearside, you've been doing that, but Michael, it really is a major shift. And so really what that allows more enterprises to do is they can actually, look for providers that do have partner ecosystems as part of their portfolio. Okay, and then content. So really, this is really one of the massive challenges for both marketing and sales, which is what content is working, what content is not, what is the role of video, and again, if I can find out what's working and know that through analytics, that's going to give me an advantage over my competitors that maybe don't know what's going on. They're just blasting blindly. They don't know if something's happening or something isn't. I mean, we can tell you for a fact that video has a very, very high open rate, up to 10 times higher than traditional content. But again, literally every single day we're talking to people, and marketers are just trying to battle through the idea of I've got to get better content. When we work with sales organizations, a lot of times we ask them, are you using the content that marketing gives you? And half the time the answer is no, we're not using it. We're doing our own stuff, or we're retweaking it, or that sort of thing. So this is also part of the mix, which is to influence buyers. You have to tell them a story. And again, content plays a role in that. But, really the big thing in selling is sometimes people don't know what works. And, if they don't find out from the client, they're kind of running blind. And or if they don't find out from their peers, hey, what did you use to get that deal? Again, top sellers are constantly looking for that and constantly monitoring. It's like their own radar. And again, this is really one of the big challenges is the marketing mix of what's the right content and how do you keep your content fresh. So it's really, really a big trend because and the other thing that is even a bigger problem is content overload. So buyers are very, very sophisticated, very hard to get their attention. Data sheets aren't really working like they used to. And so you have to get really creative, so infographics, short videos intermixed with content. Again, just like, when you're watching TV, humans are trained to recognize a show they like and a show they don't like. And the same thing goes for content. So that is a massive challenge for enterprises to get the balance right.
Yeah. Hey, Jim, I love how you've used this comment in the past, but like video is the new email. And I think it's a great example of, how people are looking to find things that really are resonating, are being much more highly personalized than ever before. And I think anything that you can do to help increase open rates, conversion, engagement is really an emerging trend that I think people have seen just dramatic results in. So I just couldn't agree more with the direction you're heading.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. And again, so one of the takeaways on this is, are you using video? Do you have video snippets? What's your strategy around video and selling? And again, that would be one of the things to say, if you're not doing it, why not? And if you're doing it and it's working, then how do you do more? And how do you leverage that with other types of content? And do you understand which content to use at the right time in a sales cycle? Okay, a little bit of an eye chart here, but this is our technology arc for sales and marketing for 2016. This looks at both emerging technologies being adopted and mature technologies, and there's two colors. There's some circles I highlighted in red and in blue. What I would tell you is this. When we are working with buyers, the first thing they do is we want to know the stuff that's emerging that's going to give us an advantage. So we've had sales engagement platforms on this report for 2 years, and again, this report came out in January. Sales engagement platforms are emerging, but when you look at content marketing, digital transaction management, mobile content management, all kinds of mobile messaging, all kinds of emerging areas versus traditional areas, legacy areas like web and video conferencing, which is a market that is going through massive consolidation. The question comes up is, well, do I need to have some of the legacy stuff like web and video conferencing if I have SEP? And the answer is, most of the times with a, quote, live pitch, no, you don't. You get it all in one. So, again, the idea of a la carte legacy IT-focused applications versus business applications that give you basically, all the things you need all at your fingertips, so you don't need to leave your application and go launch a web meeting. So, but again, this is really one of the ways that the market has changed. A couple years ago, the conversation would have been IT saying, no, don't go look at that stuff because it's not ready. And what's happened now is business people are tech savvy. In a cloud-connected world, they know that basically, it's easy to find out if something works and if it doesn't, and they're less risk averse. So again, one of the advantages of cloud software is it's very easy to fire up and get it working. And so that's why when you look at how fast markets are moving and why sales engagement platforms are coming on so fast, it's because of business buyers needing to use technology to get an advantage. So again, this is a very, and we have one on the whole digital workplace, but when you actually look at, an area that's probably going to be, as much spending going forward, close to the same amount, we think, as marketing, is the whole area of sales operations. You've got entire, sales groups now where they spend all of their time dealing with CRM, sales engagement platforms, analytics, et cetera. And so it's become a major buying center. And they're looking for less versus more. And again, that's why we think that the answer is this integrated platform approach. So what is a sales engagement platform? So first of all, we think it's the first step in digital selling. There's 7 critical components. You can see the graphic on the left, but if I just go through them quickly, first of all, you got to be able to create content. And in many of the SEPs, you can, modify content that marketing supplies, meaning you can, customize it to some extent, or even add a video overlay, like, for example, a video of myself, thanking them for the meeting, and put together a custom set of information you asked for, blah, blah, blah. Being able to manage that content, manage it quickly and easily, understand what content's working, being able to communicate, message, and again, the idea is not just about messaging and, whether it's email or messaging or voice, it's about understanding if the message is being received. So understanding in real time what's happening. Presenting, being able to basically not have to go and use standalone apps, but actually be able to literally just say, hey, why don't they show it to you, and give them a link, and be in, quote, to use a sales vernacular, live pitch. I think that's something, Michael, you guys came up with. But again, this idea of fully integrated. The analytics is really, again, some of the secret sauce, which is knowing what's happening in real time, knowing that they're really looking at your information quite a bit, and so that might mean it's the right time to call. But again, predictive business applications like SAP are going to give information that traditional stacks of technology never did. So it's not about read receipts. It's about knowing they looked at slide 20 for 20 minutes. And then CRM integration is a given. So what does that mean? Well, that means that if I'm using my sales engagement platform and I'm engaging, I'm working with prospects, with existing accounts all day long, I'm sharing information, I'm getting feedback, I'm knowing that maybe it's the right time to call because they're looking at my content right now. But all that information with a fully integrated SAP and CRM is being fed in real time back into the CRM platform. So the idea of updating or auto logging, manually updating Salesforce, which is the biggest complaint about CRM, with the sales engagement platform, that all happens automatically. So instead of spending 20 to 60 minutes a day, and again, most reps are rejecting that, enterprises are going to get much higher accuracy out of their CRM system once they've deployed a sales engagement platform. What this all means as well, long term, is the idea of integrating with partner apps and the aspect of, in a perfect storm, with the machine learning thrown in, where it starts to not only give you the analytics, but also starts to suggest that, hey, this might be the right time to share this piece of content. So this aspect of guided selling, which will gradually come online and get stronger and stronger, is one of the huge benefits. So really, this is really, Ken, the wheel of fortune relative to the platform. It's a very simple architecture, and again, ClearSlide is one of the major providers. And Michael, you've certainly seen a lot of demand coming from your buyers for this kind of approach. Can you share some thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's really great about the framework here is it really does speak to the integration across the different elements that we see people demanding, which is that you've got to have content with integrated communications that give you the analytics back, so you can obviously auto log directly into your CRM system, but then it kind of works with what you've got. And I think that one of the big shift that we're seeing is kind of the notion of guiding kind of next actions for reps. Managers are more challenged than ever before in terms of time. You got to make sure that you're able to onboard people faster, and then the notion of having it all together in one place is again a trend that we're seeing that this framework really helps address those needs.
Yeah, and and I think one of the questions that we get too on top of that is, well, I've got CRM, so I should, that's all I need. And really, the thing I would say is CRM is your system of record. It's not your system of really engagement. And so I think that's a key differentiator where we're seeing that in other markets as well. But again, the idea of I don't need to have 10 tools to do my job. I can have this platform which is fully integrated. And again, how much time is that going to save me? But how many more customers am I going to and prospects can I touch if I, once I'm onboarded and know how to use this thing? We've seen as we talk to buyers a tremendous uptick in productivity and also in pipeline as a result.
Yeah, I just love the comment about engagement. I think that's a real shift that we're seeing as well. Is that activity tracking only gets you so far. It really is the notion about, are you truly engaged with a buyer during the process, so you can be able to move things forward much more quickly. But then as you have a chance to look across a number of different deals, what's closed, what hasn't closed, you can start to be much more prescriptive around what it's going to take to be successful. And I think it really is only possible when you've got kind of, I like how you said, a system of engagement, really a platform that helps integrate all this together. So I think it's definitely a growing trend.
Cool. So we have evaluated the market. This is a report we did last year evaluating a number of major providers in a report we did that focused more specifically around just the communications part of it. But and you can see ClearSlide was one of the major providers that was rated as a leader. But it is a growing market. When you look at mobility and ease of use, and analytics. Those are some of the key things to look at. We're pleased to announce that Aragon's going to be upgrading this report to a full Aragon Research Globe on sales engagement platforms coming out this fall. And the reason for that is there's many more providers that have emerged, and that there's vast differences in the maturity of some of the offerings relative to a full platform versus having a couple of the components. And it's not a bad thing that not everybody has everything off the bat, because we're literally one of the first to define what a sales engagement platform is. But the big thing is it starts to provide a way for buyers to start to evaluate what's going on in the market. So look for that this fall. But again, really ease of use, analytics, and the fact that there's a lot of investment going into this space. That just basically, it feels to me like the early days when marketing automation came online, and now everybody just knows that you've got to have marketing automation in the marketing department to automate your website. This is the same thing. This is really the very similar thing relative to you've got to have the right platform to automate your selling efforts. And in most cases, if you think you did it just by, we bought CRM, that is not the answer. That's really more of a tracking system. It's not an engagement platform. So hopefully, as we've talked about this, we've hit this conversation a couple times. But again, when I was running a district, when I was at Xerox, we didn't have all those tools, and so it was an awful lot of work to keep track of things. And the average sales rep can only keep track of 7 deals. And when you're really trying to really grow your pipeline, this is just a fantastic way for both sales and marketing to work together, where marketing is really kind of loading up the content, and then sales can do their own targeting in addition to all the campaigns that marketing is doing. So what about it? What about the idea of digital selling and accelerating time to deals? There's a whole bunch of things that can happen all at the same time. And we've listed some of the key things. A rep can send out a custom email. They know what's happening right away, because if the client or prospect opens it, the rep is going to get an alert. If they're meeting or scheduled meetings, they can basically use the same platform to present content and also know what's happening when they're presenting. And along the way they get some guided stuff. But again, some of the other things that happen on the analytics side is, again, it's knowing what's happening, knowing what's working. For example, if you've got a 10-slide presentation and they really only look at 3 slides, does that mean maybe those other slides need to be modified? Also, the ability to, by controlling what prospects can do with content you share with them, can also kind of help you start to build out that list of people, because when you don't do it and they forward it to 50 people, you don't know who those people are, but when you're required, you can actually then basically, again, build out a set of influencers or buyers in an account. One of the biggest things, again, about digital is a rep should not today have to be manually updating their CRM system. I want to say that again. A rep today should not have to be manually updating, based on all their activities, CRM. Sales engagement platforms, the better ones, will automatically update your system, which means you're going to have almost a 70 to 80% increase in accuracy of your overall CRM system, which means forecast accuracy can generally go up. Pipeline accuracy can go up. And again, pipeline accuracy is really one of the major issues. So there's a lot of things under the radar that don't jump out immediately, but this is one of the biggest ones relative to that. And it's also really something that leads to much higher sales rep satisfaction, because they don't think, it's updating, so I can totally focus on my deals. Mobile as well. Again, being able to use a sales engagement platform on the go, on your mobile device, is kind of a given as well. But again, this idea of a one-stop shop that does a lot of things all at once, it's kind of like, giving almost the idea of a fighter jet to your sales teams, because, they don't have to, have all these different things and jump, from app to app to app. But again, the other thing is it's doing things for the rep. So the idea of this productivity thing cannot be underestimated.
Yeah.
Michael, any
Jim.
comments?
Yeah, one of the things that is sort of along the mantra of hope is not a strategy. I hear a number of different companies talk about how the iPad is their digital strategy. If you could just talk for a minute or two around some of that shift in what you're seeing.
Well, yeah. So it's a great question. Whether it's iPads or Surface Pros, have been very popular in certain verticals, like for example, life sciences. A lot of times, and I've even heard this from some of our millennials, is I have an iPad, I'm not quite sure what to do with it. So it's really not the device, which is a great display mechanism for presenting, but it's really about the apps that you have on it that make a huge difference. And so, again, we're still in early days of some of these business apps on mobile devices, but you got to think it through. So if you're saying, "Oh, we're gonna mobilize our sales force," and you haven't made an SAP part of that, then you're missing the boat because the idea is what are they going to use? Are they going to use PowerPoint? Are they going to use email? Wait a minute, what if I had it all integrated so they just press a button and everything's happening? So I think that's really, again, one of the confusing things that's happening is everybody's pitching so many things like use this app, use that app, and all we're saying is simplify, look for platforms that can basically do the things that are illustrated here and can do it on mobile devices. It can make a difference. I can tell you for a fact that myself, yours truly, I have used an iPad for 5 years here at Aragon. It does make a difference, and I'm not saying that we're totally perfect, but I know there's certain things that I use that really make a huge difference for me. It doesn't mean I'm totally independent, but usually when I'm out and about and at an event, I'm carrying the tablet more often today than a tablet and a laptop. But that's taken some time. And so what I would probably say to sales leaders is do some pilot testing, but deploy your tablets with the right set of apps, like, for example, the mobile version of your sales engagement platform, and see how that works. Be real honest. We have Salesforce. I have Salesforce One. I don't use Salesforce One that much, but I think the sales engagement platform angle is something that we're looking at using a lot more as we basically look at this second generation of tablets. So when you look at Surface Pros and iPad Pros, we're hearing an awful lot about iPad Pros being given out to sales organizations, and what we usually say is, well, stop. That's like having a TV. You got to have the TV shows or the apps that allow them to do the work. And so that would be the key call to action. And Michael, thanks for bringing that up, is you need to have a sales engagement platform, but you go spend all that money on hardware so you have an integrated way to do work. Now, if you don't have a tablet strategy yet, that's okay. But what I would probably say to you is when you look at just some of the people that have only deployed it for the sole purpose of presentations for direct reps and accounts, that's been the way they've justified it, is it's just 10 times faster. Just I've got the presentation, I pull it out, it's on, I'm presenting really, really fast. So again, that's cool. So I think we're having a little audio comments here. So anyway, I'm a little closer to the mic. So what do you do? How do you get started with this? And this builds on the last slide. So understand the possibilities. Obviously, use some of the information from Aragon relative to who the players are. ClearSlide obviously is one of the leaders. And there may be some things. Obviously, you're going to keep your key CRM platform, but there may be a couple of others. But a lot of times, what you're going to do is you're going to start to look at the apps you don't need. Old sales portals, things like that. You make your selection, and again, doing that deployment. For example, if you're going to deploy tablets, I would wait till you make your selection, and you can do this very quickly. You can do a pilot test in 2 weeks and pretty much be ready to go. So this is not a long, drawn-out process. Pretty straightforward, and again, we think that this is something that in the next 3 years, we estimate up to 70% of sales organizations will deploy a sales engagement platform. Some other thoughts on content. So again, sales engagement platforms can help this thing that I teed up as a trend, which is the overwhelming amount of content, balancing that, helping to allow the sales rep to understand the analytics of what content's working. But again, we think this is really one of the things. It's real-time feedback, both on the stuff you're using, individuals using, but what the team is using. And again, managers can also see that and also mentor their teams relative to that. So this actually helps with the effectiveness of what is working and what isn't. Really can tremendously impact that. And consulting companies have spent years and tons of money trying to figure that out. Now this is coming down to the sales team level. So it's not just high-end, high-powered consulting companies that have been basically spending millions and millions of dollars trying to understand content analytics. Now you get content analytics built into your sales engagement platform. So really it's a democratization of analytics where you're knowing literally that, not only what's working, but what's being viewed. That's a game changer, really. And that alone, just the real-time analytics, can justify the complete investment for an SCP. So another really big reason why sales engagement platforms can impact performance really has to do with the overall sales organization. And what I mean by that is you can see that, it's a rule of thirds. You've got the top third that generally you don't really need to do a lot with top performers, but you can learn from top performers. For managers, it's really about the middle and the bottom third. And so, if you can get them to use a sales engagement platform and understand what's happening, again, you're going to really empower them with the kind of knowledge that the top sales performers basically have been doing themselves. So this idea of getting the middle third to perform at a high level is really one of the hidden benefits of an SEP. And again, managers really need to understand that, because if they understand how to use it, get their reps to use it, you're going to have a much higher impact as a company, because you're going to have up to 2/3 of your sales organization performing. And again, the bottom third, a lot of times it's more of a coaching and a skills problem where they're new or they just don't know. And so, getting them onboarded and getting them competent on using that sales engagement platform at least gets them in the game and gets them contributing. And again, the thing we've seen is, there's a high degree of yearning and wanting to belong and wanting to make it to winner circle. So sales engagement platforms really can be a catalyst to really increase the performance of the entire company. But again, the middle third, getting them at a higher level, is a game changer for sales management. And so again, this is another lens, a way to look at using technology as a weapon. So the key thing is, when you deploy, start looking at it from this lens. If your sales operations or the general manager of sales, this is a critical thing that you should be looking for, which is, if I'm giving them the right technology stack, I can really get a lot more performance out of them. One of the few areas really where I see that this could, has a massive impact across an organization. And again, when we talk about the organization, there's roles for sales, there's roles for marketing, but again, the idea of the buyer personas, the right content, being marketing responsibilities, the right platform, the right methodology, because you do have to have a sales methodology. And again, fully equipped, what I call the right kit, but it's a combination of software and hardware. We just talked about that. But putting it all together, that really enables a full digital sales organization. And again, if we haven't hit the nail on the head here, we've got a pretty strong belief that, a sales engagement platform is like basically Microsoft Office for sales teams. It's a one-stop shop, gives you everything you need, but it's going to tell you what you need to know, when you need to know it, so you can basically drive your deals to close faster. That's really the bottom line. And so really the summary is how to win. So again, digital selling is, just as part of, everybody's talking about digital transformation. transforming the sales organization means leveraging technology. And again, we think you should be investing in the idea of a sales engagement platform, that quality content is job one for marketing, and that, the faster you plan to act, the faster you can drive higher performance out of your sales teams. And we've certainly talked to lots of buyers over the last 2 years about this trend, and now it's a market. And so we would just say that when you talk about digital selling, it's about equipping your teams, and those that do are going to get to the top of the mountain faster. Michael, any comments?
Nope, you captured it, Jim. There's a whole bunch of questions as well that I think would be really great for us to cover, just given the time left. Can we jump right in?
Sure thing.
All right. Well, I think the one that I want to start with is there's a couple of these just around the cost, and the question was really around, hey, listen, we're spending a certain amount for our CRM system. Should I be expecting kind of to pay a multiple on top of that for a sales engagement platform? Kind of what's the right cost? And, before I turn it over to you, I just wanted to give a brief commentary around that. That's actually part of the value in the sales engagement platform, is that it is quite cost effective and should help justify investment, that you're really bringing together content, integrated communications, analytics, all together. From a ClearSide perspective, we have plans that range from $35 a month per user all the way up to $125 per month per user. Within the context of CRM, it's actually quite reasonable. But are you seeing some of those same trends, Jim?
Yeah, I mean, the amount of money that sales is willing to spend to get the engagement and productivity is it's really one of the critical buying centers relative to high impact positions, and again, when you look at what they're spending already today in other areas, this is actually, when you look at it, it's a very small dollar amount relative to the impact it has on the enterprise. So again, when you talk about, even companies saying, they're doubling what they're spending because they want more analytics out of their CRM platform, this is a drop in the bucket. It's almost a no-brainer.
Great. There was a couple of quick questions just on ClearSide, which I'll answer, which is it was about integrations into CRM and other systems, and ClearSide has an integration into both Salesforce, Dynamics, and we've got APIs to tap into other systems. That was sort of kind of covers that. But there's a great question around, okay, listen, this tool is capturing all of these sales conversations with all these predictive tools. What happens to them? Over time, you're sort of collecting them. What happens again? Kind of over that long period of time.
I mean, as far as the data?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so again, the idea is that the integration with CRM is really the answer. The deals get updated, so you literally can go into the opportunity and understand that that these activities took place, and I can quickly look at that and say, well, based on that response, that we just moved that by two phases. So. I think that's really what the idea of automation. You can make an argument that SEPs really are the automation factor relative to deal management. So the idea of manual logging, and trust me, yours truly has spent an awful lot of time in his career auto update, manually going in, a lot of times on Thursday nights with all the week's activities, and now I don't have to do that.
Great.
So
great.
That data point alone, which is if you are doing it today manually, you are doing it wrong because you're wasting your valuable time. A sales rep or a sales manager is a highly valuable asset. So that's why, back to your pricing question, this is like a no-brainer. But we think that over the next 10 years, all aspects of an enterprise will be automated. So the idea of humans manually entering data, that goes away. The applications will be able to do that. So again, that's a key facet of digital selling is the platform should do it for you as far as just data updates. Then you can really focus on the quality, which is, am I touching the right influencers? Do I have a good account development plan? All those things that really say, you know what, I missed that buyer. So instead of worrying about, my boss is going to yell at me because I didn't update it, I can say, hey, I discovered a key influencer we didn't know about before, boss. So again, it really gets back to the qualitative aspect of selling versus, basically doing stuff the app should have been doing years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm going to combine a couple of the questions that have come into one, which is really about sales leaders. So Jim, you did a good job talking about how if you're doing it manually, it's wrong. But can you talk a little bit more about how sales leaders are taking advantage of the data coming in to really manage their teams more effectively, and why having a sales engagement platform matters to sales leaders beyond just cost, et cetera?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, one of the things we're starting to see is, manager dashboards where managers can monitor their teams as far as looking at what they're doing. What in some cases, I know you can do it with your platform. You can actually, listen to a recording or listen live to a rep that's actually doing a pitch. And again, we think more providers will need to emulate what you're doing. But that's a fantastic way to do coaching. And again, that's something that contact centers have done, where you're listening to call center rep talking. But when a manager can do that, they can give immediate feedback. But they can also, through the analytics, recognize, like, wait a minute, this person's not making their forecast, but they're also not really doing that much relative to, they haven't really been sending. Or even doing the follow-ups. And that's going to jump out way sooner for a manager that has SEP deployed versus just CRM. Yeah. So a lot of times the manager has to try to figure out, what are they doing? You're going to know literally instantaneously and can take corrective action. So it becomes really an action platform for the manager, or they're going to basically be doing monitoring of that, I think, on a daily basis in real time. To know what's happening. And again, the idea of a good manager is you don't just watch, you act. You jump in and say, hey, it looks like you're having, an opportunity arose. Let me help you with that.
Yeah. Again, I'm going to paraphrase a couple of questions, but hopefully this will help folks. But we know there's a growing trend around turnover. You mentioned up front, Jim, about kind of a change in the expectations around particularly millennial sellers. How are you finding kind of the expectations that newer sales reps are having around the tools that they have and the ease of use, and just as you're talking to other sales leaders?
Well, obviously, a lot of the millennials have grown up with, many of them, have had Android and iPhone devices for years, and they're very used to, they expect the ease of use to be there. But they also expect less complexity. So I think that's really, I think the provider community, such as you guys and others, have recognized that and have said, hey, there's got to be an easier way. But today, really one of the things is, ease of use is kind of one of the buying criteria. So smart managers are saying, hey, I'm watching, I'm learning, I've certainly picked up tips from our millennials about some of their views on things, and they're very savvy and they're not afraid. So I think that's one of the things also that comes out. And so really the great news is that, in the sales area, that the market has reacted to that, and the products are just much easier to use than they were even a year ago.
Yeah. Well, great. I think that covers a lot of the questions. I did want to make sure that we ended, Jim, just talking a little bit about the new report. But you may want to just kind of give a quick 20-second overview, and then for folks just going to clearslide.com, you can get a copy of the report that Jim does. But I did want to have you set that up, Jim.
Yeah, sure. So we actually did a very in-depth market research report identifying what the sales engagement market is. So we identified that. And there is more detail on the size of the market. But there's also in the report, it's quite extensive relative to why there is a problem. So a lot of stuff we covered in the webinar is covered in much greater detail in the written report. And again, it also talks about how do you get started with it and gives you an action plan. But again, we spent about 2 years trying to triage this because we had so many calls about, hey, the sales enablement stuff is overwhelming. Would you please do a technology segmentation? So that's really, when you look at sales engagement platforms, again, the idea of the one-stop shop for digital selling, this report really explains that all, and it's a nice, since ClearSlide's making it available to you, it's a nice way to do a follow-up as regard to when you leave the webinar. I would download the report, and that gives you kind of a really nice action plan on what you should do about it as far as getting started.
Well, great.
All right, thank you so much, Jim. That concludes our webinar today. I hope that everyone in the webinar will download that report and join us for the next webinar. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
19 billion, not as fast of a growth rate. The reason for that today is a lot of people today, when you talk about how they sell, they're using email, they're using PowerPoint, they're using WebEx, they're using a zillion different products, and they're not really getting the job done. So we really look at this and look at the market as being a platform for selling, the idea of omni-channel engagement, and really the bottom line is faster outcomes due to really intensive real-time analytics. Obviously, ClearSlide is one of the players, and Mike's going to be adding some color commentary here as we talk about this. In fact, I'll just throw something out, Michael. What's your take on this whole idea of office suites versus SCP?
Yeah. Hey, well, thanks, Jim. Well, I think I think you're going to talk a little bit more about this today, but I think the notion of being able to pull everything together into kind of a set of tools that you can use that give you not just the level of activity that's going on, but true engagement is really transforming the business of selling. And I think we see that trend with a lot of the customers that we talk to, and I think that some of the research that you're doing in this area really is helping define kind of the direction that people are heading.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And again, we're going to really dive into this in a big way. But the idea of really when a category is a real market, it's basically there's a set of both buyers and a set of sellers. And we've studied this market for over 2 years. And the reason that we're really have spent time on this is because a lot of our clients ask us to, because there's so much confusion in sales enablement at the technology level, and we're really we think we've kind of really come up with the answer. What about market disruption in digital era? So we really look at the app economy and digital applications such as, for example, ordering a taxi via a mobile app like Uber. That has totally disrupted the transportation industry. Yellow Cab in San Francisco declared bankruptcy, and that's created a whole other set of issues and opportunities. But when you look at selling has been around since before the 1600s, but 1600s was really when it came really online with door-to-door and something that they call in Europe, they call peddlers. And now what we're really looking at, starting around 2010 and forward, with the emergence of providers like ClearSlide and others, is the idea of digital selling. And what's going to enable that is what we're calling these sales engagement platforms. But essentially, a lot of the craft of selling has not changed over the years. The methodologies, whether it's inside, outside, direct, indirect, those have been rather consistent too. But really, the idea of a new toolkit, not just a briefcase, not just collaterals, not just a phone, not just email, but a whole new set of things that allow you to really do everything all at once is really kind of what we're talking about. And so when you talk about digital business, one of the things we're talking about is, are you selling in an analog way or are you selling in a digital way? And by the way, here at Aragon, we have salespeople, we have millennials, and millennials oftentimes are one of the first way, they're very smart technology. They even recognize that here, like, hey, the way we're doing it is not working. We need a better way.
Yeah. Hey, Jim. You and I have talked about this, for a while, but there's a lot of talk about the death.
Welcome to the ClearSlide and Aragon Research webinar, a wake-up call for sales and marketing. Invest in a sales engagement platform. We'll get started in a couple minutes, and to start, we'll just conduct a quick sound check. So if you can hear me, please click Ask a Question and type Yes. We'll take 10 seconds to collect your responses. Presenting today, we have Jim Lundy, CEO and lead analyst of Aragon Research, and Michael Schultz, VP of Marketing and Business Development at ClearSlide. Aragon Research is an industry analyst firm that focuses on technology research and business advisory services. Prior to Aragon Research, Jim was the VP and General Manager of the Collaboration Business Unit at Saba Software. He also spent 12 years at Gartner as a Managing VP and Distinguished Analyst. I'll let you take it from here, Jim.
Thank you, Kathy, and great to be here today with you all, wherever you are in the world. We're broadcasting live here from California. Michael Schultz is also with me, and we're looking forward to talking to you today about why this topic of sales engagement platforms is such a wake-up call. And one of the reasons for that is what we call the race to digitize sales. And what do we mean by that? We think that there's a fundamental shift in the way that people are selling. It's not the way that I used to sell. I used to be a sales leader, and it's not the way a lot of people are selling today because buyers are just so much more sophisticated, and salespeople and sales managers need better answers. They need it faster. And to do that, they need to sell digitally. And the purpose of this webinar today is to introduce you to the topic of sales engagement platforms, which will enable digital selling.
Of a salesman about the profession kind of going away as we go more digital. And I think what's fascinating, even in the example you just brought up, is how it's really the nature of selling has changed and evolved, and it's the adaptation to new technologies that actually helping just kind of reimagine the profession. And so I just, again, it's a fascinating topic, and I know that we're going to cover some of that during the rest of the session.
Well, yeah, it's funny, because having dealt myself, both at the product level and in sales and marketing roles and also as an analyst, I hear a lot of comments like, oh, we don't need salespeople. But yeah, when you look at most issues with most companies, when they're not performing, it usually has to do with we didn't invest in sales. So, I've certainly met a lot of chief engineers over the years and there's still companies say like, oh, we don't need sales. We can do it all online. And there's some truth to, immediate consumption. But usually if there's a value to a solution over a certain dollar value, most companies are going to say, I'm not going to really buy it until I can talk to somebody that can help me. And again, salespeople are really, at the end of the day, they're advocates, and they're really about helping connect and build relationships, and to provide the right level of service. Okay, so one of the other things we want to introduce as a trend is we're talking about the shift to predictive, and we've talked about here at Aragon predictive business applications for almost 3 years, and the area that is growing the fastest, where we've seen something called machine learning help sales organizations grow faster, is really in sales. So whether it's leads, and again, when we talk about the whole world of business, the biggest trend today is digital business and digital work. And we think this idea of sales engagement is going to be the thing that will really accelerate time to revenue for companies. So a couple of things we're going to try to accomplish today as far as our agenda. Talk about some of the key trends in sales engagement. Talk about the market, because we have identified a market size. We're going to talk about how the market's going to evolve. We'll talk a little bit about the vendors and how they're going to be evaluated, and then really kind of leave you with, if you are a sales leader, sales operations, or marketing, how can you put sales engagement to work and really make the shift to digital selling? So with that, we're going to dive in. First, what is sales engagement? So this whole idea of sales enablement has been a term that's been around for a long time, and we really looked at the idea of how do salespeople touch customers. And so we'll be talking today about this and defining what a sales engagement platform is. But essentially, it's really trying to put forth really a platform that really does bring a lot of the elements together as far as a technology stack, kind of similar to the way other office suites are being sold to knowledge workers, but allows a rep to sell digitally. So, the market that we've defined is SCP today around 700 million, growing to about 5 billion by 2021. Now, to put that in perspective, cloud office suites, which again is the horizontal angle, Google or Microsoft, 14 billion growing about